see if I can do this without from Judy. Could you do that, Todd? My ability to handle. Can everybody hear me in the back? No, can't hear me? A little louder. We've got a control person, this chap here, the young man in white. Sounds quite good. As soon as he's ready, I'm ready. Can you hear okay? Cool. Can we make yourselves at home? Plenty of seats here in the front, and I'll try to keep the Shamu's fiddle effect to limited extremes. There are ponchos for sale, $1. So I'm really here for you in this session. You've heard the overview that I gave in the plenary. What I'd like to share with you at some point, if it works for you, is as I mentioned, the specifics that I see happen most frequently for organizations that are trying to break through from here to here or get back to here from here. But what I'd love to do first of all is just to throw it open to you to see if you've got any comments or questions or observations arising from the session this morning. Happy to get those out of the way first, so that if there are any areas of confusion or concern that you have, that we can cover that. So anybody got anything that you already stole a question and you're coming in here with sliding in under the radar with a second one?
I'm really impressed.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest.
That's quite enough to get a free book. Okay. let's be honest. That's worth a free book.
I was also impressed.
Not a lot of innovation going on there. No, it's all right.
Nice output.
Now you're just lying.
I think that the curve, you're on the top, and I understand the part of the problem is the limitations, the graphic limitations, but you've drawn the top as a relatively flat curve. If you're running our own business, I'm of the opinion that it's a steeper curve and that you fall out of the ES range really easily. Without even half trying, you can slip one side to the other. I'd be interested in your comment.
You know, I think that aspect is an insightful comment. Can I have a book back, please? I don't like it when people ask hard questions. If I'd known that. By the way, just an aside, would you folks forgive me if I sucked on a halls while we were speaking, because as you probably worked out, my voice is slowly quietly going. I don't mean it as any sign of disrespect, and I would not normally do it, but I've got a workshop to leave on Thursday, and the folks there might get upset with me, and I'm blaming you. What I have seen is mostly I do some credit to the organisation. Organisations that have got a high half-life on their product innovation, so if they're in a highly technical arena, for example, it's sort of like that, you can fall off the cliff very easily. Commodities organisations, somewhat more here, you can get up there and stay, and then most organisations are somewhere in between. So you're right that it's not the same for everybody, but each organisation has got a different one. Does that make sense? Any other questions or comments from this morning?
You talked about the treadmill stage, and that's where the spiral can kind of start, where you can't diagnose, can't self-diagnose anymore, and some of those things. What, the processes take over. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that stage and what management should be doing during that stage when you can't self-diagnose, the processes have taken over, you're in that treadmill to try to prevent that big, slide on down, just so that you can't back up? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, the key thing is to put people in place that act as flags. It's very important to have truth tellers in the organisation at that point. One of the things that I take as a sort of an immediate negative is if a sense there's any of that culture building up in senior management where they give out the vibe of don't bring me any bad news. You ever experienced that? Where you just sort of know it's not, maybe you're not overtly told not to bring bad news, but you get that sense that it's not really welcome. Any deviance from viewing data as useful, any pressure to hedge things to justify a strategy or a business plan, that's all signs the treadmill's creeping in. When you begin to manipulate the environment around you to get the answers that you want, that's a sure sign that that's beginning to happen. And so what you want to have are people in place who call on that type of thing. You know, at the extreme, you've got the court jester type of person, but in most organizations that are up here where we're talking about treadmill, that has been excluded quite some time ago. So what you want are strong challenge function. If I see a leader in a room and it's clear that they're not being given a strong challenge function, I don't mean people are arguing with them. I just mean that, you know, there's a healthy debate about topics and about the validity of this data. That's all signals that you're headed that way. It's mostly people oriented. I'm going to show in a few minutes the 5 or 6 areas where that can best happen, which will probably help answer your question a little better. Any other observations or anything at all before we move forward?
And this may be what you're heading, but
I'm not. I believe me, Andy, I ain't heading anywhere. The airport this afternoon, and that's my only plan.
You mentioned that you know, AD and L get together to start an organization. It's kind of a typical and successful model. But when you get to that whitewater point, when you recognize you need to go out and find a peak. Can I talk a little bit about how you identify that person, what the characteristics that you look for when you're looking for a peak to bring in?
Well, historically, it tends to happen somewhat do I want to say surreptitious? No, because I can't say that. Serendipitously. There's an extra syllable in there, isn't it? So, I mean, in its most basic, when you go right back to the fun stages, you take something simple like IT. Some poor person who happens to show some ability to fix a broken PC when passing somebody's computer finds themselves known as the IT person, right? And then they get given the job and they get to do it for a while. That's how you put the P bits in place in a business that's growing in fun. That's why there isn't a P function, because what we tend to do is just hijack people who will do the little bits that we need to have done. And so as a result, we've got the little tiny bits of P going on, but no central P leader who's, you know, forefront of making sure that that's all consolidated. So the first move is typically either like a general manager, if it's a production manufacturing business, can sometimes be brought in, or it might be a CFO, or just a general accountant if CFO is too heavy a title. Occasionally I've seen it happen through HR. The first real big P function that's brought in is HR. If the business is held off till it gets to about 75 people, then an HR person becomes important, then by 100 it's absolutely necessary. And so it's happening without it really being planned. We're just responding to what the functional need is, as opposed to saying we need somebody in charge. So if I can show it in terms of the org chart, here's what's going on. Here's the org chart of a business in fun. Well, first of all, there isn't an org chart. They'd laugh at you if you said there was an org chart. But essentially what happens is there's usually a core function in the business in fun. It's usually sales. But it might be research if you're a pharmaceutical company, or teaching if you're an academic organization. In most for-profit businesses, it's the sales function. And everything else, accounting, purchasing, distribution, installation, legal, whatever you want, whatever other functions you need to have, are all satellite functions. Just one, somebody does each of those things. And in here we have our big dogs. And I'll show you what a terrible drawer I am, because that, believe it or not, is a dog. So, actually it just looks exactly like my golden. Except it's blue. So the big dogs tend to be in here, and what happens is the big dogs just arrive back at the ranch and they bark at each of these functions. Buy this, send that out, is that installed yet? Do this, have we bought this? Did they get this? That's the communication line for most businesses in fun. And that's as it should be. That's how you grow a business from when it just gets out of our struggle up to Whitewater. It's essentially a sales-based organization. And then what begins to occur is when we start to hit whitewater, we're starting to make mistakes here. And typically what happens is we transition to a org chart that if we were to, a sort of heart and kidney thing, where in an attempt to try to overcome the things that we're dropping, the balls that we're dropping here, is we've got sales here, or whatever the core central function of the business is, and then we put everything else, we can try to consolidate it, and we put somebody here to sort of run it. And who that is can be very different from business to business to business. It might be somebody that's already in here who's like a primus inter pares. Maybe there's a mother hen here, gender-free phrase by the way, could be male or female, who really has been clucking around and keeping all of these people in control anyway. Maybe there's a highly qualified individual in here, who's got a bit more business nous, or maybe we go right outside and we hire somebody. So the way in which it happens tends to differ from business to business. But intuitively what senior management are trying to do all the time is to bring some key harmonization. And typically they see the importance of it in the non-sales side. It's really here that we need to bring this harmonization in. Because when we see these mistakes, we tend to view them as functionally problematic as opposed to being a problem here. But then what happens is we've got all our O's in here. There's a couple of O's in here, but there's quite a lot of small P's too. And now that we've got this heart and kidney model, and I'll take this off. Still doing it. Bear with me. Try to get you saved from having to listen to the rustle of my shirt. Now I guess where things fall. Where do you think those mistakes fall? If we keep making mistakes in whitewater, do you think sales are putting their hands up and saying, our fault, we made the mistake? Do you think everything else is putting their hands up and saying, we made the mistake? It all falls right here. No man's land. And these sides start throwing things. And sales and ops, we get into a sales versus ops sort of a contention. It can be low level, barely noticeable, or at its extreme it can become extremely frictional and factional, where sales are getting totally teed off and constantly being asked, essentially what sales will say is, you want me to fill the invoice in triplicate and email it to 17 addresses, or do you want me to get the next sale? What do you want me to do, boss? Because I can't do both. And these folks are saying, how on earth can we order the right thing if you won't take time to put the right order number for your product? We've got SKUs that we introduced, and this becomes a contentious sort of a conflict. Does that make sense? Do you see how that can happen? And really what we're trying to do when you make the move to have people begin to think in a synergistic mindset, the org chart, and you realize here when I say org chart, I'm talking about it in its how do people communicate sense rather than the boxes. It tends to become more like this. Which is what I call a catcher's mitt. Typically at this point, sales starts to become channel split. We're getting to the point where we're selling different products and services to different channels. And so the sales function has to point differently to different client and customer bases. But everything else, the ops side of things, isn't separate from sales. It becomes part of the organization, gets reunified. And there's transparency here. There isn't anywhere for the mistakes to fall between. And it's the synergist role really to do